Hello, and welcome. Now, today we're going to be talking about how to stop playing small. But before I continue, just in case we've never met before and this is your first time joining me, even if you're watching on the replay, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself, okay? So basically, my name is Nina Dafe, and I help heart-centered Christian women who want to banish the blocks, keeping them from crushing their business goals once and for all, okay? And just in terms of what got me kind of thinking along the lines of how to stop playing small. Last week, if you tuned in, hey Dora, hiya. So last week, if you tuned in or if you watched the replay, then you know that we were in Genesis 41. And I believe it was verses 50 to 52. And we talked about Asenath, who was Joseph's wife. Okay. And I just found this whole story very, very interesting from the perspective of what they called the two children that Asenath had for Joseph. So the first one was called Manasseh, which basically means to forget. And the second one was called Ephraim, which means fruitful. In all honesty, we talked a little bit about Manasseh last week in terms of not holding on to the past. So how to practice self-forgiveness and move forward, basically, not being trapped in the past. So I really thought in and of myself that this week we'd be talking about Ephraim and what it means to be fruitful. But God had other plans. So last week, basically, when I was reflecting on it, I fell asleep with a particular thought. And the thought was, what if all of the bad stuff or all of the stuff that happened to Joseph was actually to get him out of his comfort zone? Because one of the things that the Bible says in Genesis 41 verses 50 to 52 is that he called Manasseh because he said that God had caused him, because of all the success that he now had by that point, being second in command to the Pharaoh, pretty much king, he ruled, he made all of the decisions, so having achieved all of that success, that God had caused him to forget, his father's house and also all the toil that he had been through since leaving his father's house. But I'd never stopped before last night, to be honest with you, to consider that, I don't know, in a way that we always kind of paint Joseph's story as being really super sad, because let's be honest, there are really parts of it that it is that maybe it had to happen that way. So let me explain. When we first meet Joseph, he's in his father's house. Jacob is his dad. And he's, out of all his 11 brothers, he is his dad's absolute favorite, the apple of his eye. I'm sure we all know about Joseph and his Technicolor coat. I almost said Technicolor dream coat, like the theatre play, but yeah. his coat of many colors, and so I almost feel that, especially given God's purpose for him, which, he started having those dreams, from a very young age, of having his brothers bow down to him, knowing that he was going to be in a high position and, this, that, and the other. Being the apple of your dad's eye, having it quite cushy there, God's purpose for him was that he needed to be away from his family and that he needed to go to Egypt, not only to provide for his family when the famine hit, but he was literally going to be the catalyst for bringing the children of Israel over to Egypt, so that the prophecy, hey guys, say hi in the comments, you're so quiet today, come on, let's have this back and forth. But he was literally going to be the catalyst for actually, bringing the children of Israel to Egypt and causing God's prophecy, which he had originally given to Abraham, to kind of come to pass, right? If things were so cushy at his father's house and he continued to stay there, then that plan that God had for him never would have come to pass. The same thing also for, after his brothers plotted to kill him, and then he was sold as a slave to Potiphar. Potiphar trusted him. Potiphar basically made him head over his household. You know, he had favor in the house. Once again, he would have stayed there unless what happened with Potiphar's wife, where basically she accused him of doing something that he didn't. You know, he would have stayed there unless he had had things made difficult for him and then ended up in prison, right? Hey, love. Bless you. Well, I hope you find it here. But yeah, like he absolutely would have stayed in that household as well, right? And so I think that point number one, basically what I'm trying to get to in a very roundabout way, is that how we stop playing small is not being afraid to relinquish our comfort zone. So when we are feeling God nudge us forward, when we are feeling God saying to move on, when we have that inner knowing that actually there's more for us, that we are supposed to do, that we are supposed to be a part of, etc., that we should follow that leading and that we should go with it. Because in my experience, when I don't follow the leading of God and when I don't go with it, he forces me out. He makes things super duper uncomfortable, just like he did with Joseph. You know, the people who I would have trusted, or the situation that was so comfortable and cushy before suddenly turns, and I kind of find myself having to come out of the comfort zone by force and in sorrow, rather than just, you know, having gone with it. And so I think in terms of not playing small, that's really kind of the first thing. That's point number one. I don't really feel like I'm going in any particular order, but that is definitely point number one. Don't be afraid to come out of your comfort zone, because God is a God who said that we should be fruitful and we should multiply. And in order to be fruitful and multiply, you have to expand, right? You have to spread. It means you can't stay in one spot. So that is really, really, really the first thing. I think the second thing as well that really strikes me about Joseph and his not playing small is the thing that got him into trouble with his brothers in the first place was the fact that God revealed his purpose to him through dreams. And he happened to tell his brothers about it. And they did not like the fact that the dreams seemed to suggest that they would be his subordinates and that they would be bowing down to him. They were already jealous of him, as I said, because of the fact that he was their dad's favorite. But then we've also, you know, now got the fact that actually you're younger than us and you're telling us that, you know, we're going to bow down and we're going to serve you, etc., etc. So that's I think what pushed them over the edge, and that's what made them throw him into the pit and sell him as a slave, you know, to the point where he ended up in Potiphar's house, right? And what I love about Joseph is the fact that even though it was technically his dreams that got him into trouble, he never stopped dreaming and he never stopped operating in his gifts, to the point where even after what happened with Potiphar's wife and he ended up in prison, like when the butler and the baker needed their dreams interpreted, he still did it. You know, he didn't suppress his gifts. He still did what it is that he needed to do. And when I think about, you know, us as people, you know, in the modern day as God's women, you know, the women in business, heart-centered, visionary Christian women, I find it really, really interesting that when God gives us gifts, or when he's telling us to come out of our comfort zones, or when he's telling us to do new things, that we tend to suppress our gifts. You know, we are, hey, Michelle, you know, we're worried about what it is that people will say about us. We're worried about being criticized. We're worried about being judged. Like, Joseph was literally almost killed because he operated in his gifts. You know, he was literally hated by his brothers because of the gifts that he had, and yet it never stopped him. it never stopped him, because Joseph's main priority was pleasing God. So I'm going to clear my throat. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, Joseph's main priority was pleasing God. He didn't care about what his brothers had thought about him or what they did to him, how they tried to crucify him, and how they said to him, "Who do you think you are?" etc., etc. The fact of the matter is, he knew, and he had an inner knowing, that his destiny was tied to his gifts, and so he wasn't going to hide his light under a bushel. And so that's really the second part of not playing small. Number one was coming out of your comfort zone before, like Joseph, you are forced out. And number two was not caring what the naysayers have to say about you, not caring what it is that they do to you, because the fact of the matter is, from that you're operating according to God's will, it's fine. Don't worry about, I don't know, trolls. Don't worry about whether or not your family or friends agree with you. Don't worry about the critiques that you may get, etc., etc. Because I am really and truly a living witness that, yeah, do not get me wrong. The negativity will come. I'm not even going to say may come. It absolutely will, because we have an adversary. And if you look up the word adversary, like literally, it means opponent. It means someone who comes against, right? So we're always going to have resistance to our purpose. We're always going to have resistance to our path. I think if there's anything that Joseph's story teaches us, it's that it's to be expected. But the other thing that his story teaches us is that as much as we have an adversary, as much as they may rise up in the form of other people, naysayers, critiques, judgment, etc., etc., as long as you keep on going and doing what it is that God says that you are supposed to do, you will continue to soar and to rise to absolute heights. Yesterday, I posted a post on my Instagram and on my Facebook that at the moment is getting quite a lot of attention. It's a picture of a really beautiful table, almost like a banquet, basically, with lots of food, and facing like a really nice kind of town hall. And the caption that I gave it was from Psalm 23. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. If you're not following me on Instagram or on Facebook, then I think I'm at Far Above Ruby's collection on all platforms. You can see what I'm talking about. But basically, it was really just reminding me of this situation, because that's also, first of all, what God did in Joseph's life. But see, Michelle says that she loved that, right? So it's what God did in Joseph's life, but it's also what God will do and does do still in our lives in this modern day. How can God prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies if you have no enemies, if you have no naysayers, if you have no haters, if you have no people who are criticizing you? Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is, as I said, expect it, take it in stride, see it as part of the journey, but by no means should you let it stop you, okay? So number one, come out of your comfort zone. And number two, continue to operate in your gifts no matter what. Don't play small. Don't worry about what people have to say about you. It doesn't matter. And once again, speaking from personal experience, this time last year, I had a really big falling out with someone who I really would have considered like a sister to me. And it was actually to do with, what I'm doing as part of the Far Above Ruby's collection. And it was an interesting one, because I remember at the time thinking to myself, if someone who has known me for and this isn't a 2-minute friendship, this was someone who I was friends with for 10 years. And I literally remember at the time thinking, if someone who is like a sister to me can so misconstrue what it is that I'm trying to do through my writing and through my blogging and everything like that, should I stop? Should I stop writing? Should I just pack this all up? Because if someone close to me can't get it, then how can I expect outsiders or, people who don't know me to get it, right? So literally, I almost stopped this time last year. If I had stopped, then once again, if you have been keeping up with me and following me, you know that I've had like speaking opportunities abroad come up. I'm speaking actually at Michelle's event on February 2nd. I was featured on a lot more blog posts and guest posts, etc., etc. Like, I feel like last year the Far Above Rubies had the most exposure and the most growth. Not only that, but the Miracle Mindset Makeover also never would have happened if I had stopped, if I had listened to that naysayer because I was so hurt. Does that make sense? So I'm just literally saying, and the biggest lesson that I think that I took from that is that it doesn't matter what other people have to say about you, or how much they critique you, or how much they troll you, or how much they come against you, as long as you don't internalize it, as long as you don't let it stop you doing what you are supposed to do and walking according to God's purpose. And I'm not sitting here saying that stuff doesn't hurt. It does. No one likes to be called names. No one likes to be misjudged, especially when it's coming from the people closest to you, like what happened to Joseph, like what happened to me. But the fact of the matter is, when you read the Bible, even with Jesus, that's exactly what happened, And so, hey, when you're going to certain heights, when you're coming out of your comfort zone, when you're refusing to shrink and be small, and not even coming out of your comfort zone, coming out of the comfort zone of how people see you, and shaking things up in terms of where people want you to stay. Do you know what I mean? And stretching and expanding in that sense. There's always going to be a weathering. Stay the course. Push past it. Don't let it hold you back. Okay, I'm just going to pause for a minute just to read some of the comments. Fear God, not man. Thank God you didn't listen. Listen, honestly, thank God I didn't listen, and also thank God that I had people around me who I could speak to, and who could kind of talk me off the ledge. If I'm very, very honest with you. And I think that kind of would, takes me nicely into point number 3. So number 1 was, coming out of your comfort zone. Number 2 was continuing to operate in your gifts, no matter what may come against you, whether it's critique, judgment, whatever. Number 3 is very much about relationships, very, very much about relationships, because when you come out of your comfort zone, you are often not only put into new situations, you're put in front of new people, and not even necessarily just new people perhaps that you're not used to interacting with, people who seem to be, that next step above you, and, all of that sort of jazz as well. I mean, once again, it's what happened with Joseph. He went from his father's house to Potiphar's house, who was a really, really powerful man. And then from Potiphar's house to the palace, to the point where he was serving the Pharaoh. Okay. And once again, in those kind of situations, especially when it's new, especially when perhaps you don't know the protocol, Joseph was in a different culture, he was very much in an unknown realm. And sometimes when we're seeking success and when we're trying to progress, whether it's in career or whether it's in business, it can be daunting, it can be scary. And that's another thing that can make us want to kind of control contract and collapse into ourselves and just play small because it's easier, right? But once again, it's about pushing past that and continuing to do what it is that you do best. And that's literally just operating in your gifts. What I love about Joseph is that no matter where he found himself, whether it was the pit or whether it was the palace, he continued to operate in his gift. He continued to operate in his purpose. That's what kept him grounded. And that's what also continued to give him favor with God, and continue to keep him promoted. And that's really the thing that I want you guys to hold on to as well. I recently came across a teaching from Dr. Miles Monroe before he died. And in the video, he was talking about the type of heart that a leader is supposed to have, which is essentially, a servant heart. And he was talking about the fact that when you are gifted, especially as a Christian, it's really important that you don't become conceited and feel like people are following you. They're not following you, they're following your gift. And the gift is the evidence of Christ in you. Your gift is God working through you. Your gift is God using you as a vessel and just demonstrating himself through you, right? And that's also the thing that's really, really important to bear in mind as well. I think if we go back to point number 2, I was talking about, the potential of judgment and confrontation and trolls and, this, that, and the other. Like, you do realize that when you suppress your gift, you are essentially suppressing the God in you. Like, when you look up the dictionary definition of the word glory, one of the definitions is, how do I put it? Is like it's talking about its nature. So, for example, the glory of the sun is its heat or its light. The glory of birds is the fact that they can fly and that they can sing. It's all the stuff that they do naturally. Your glory, or the way that God's glory is demonstrated through you, is through what you do naturally. So, for example, for me, I am naturally a teacher, just in general, but also a teacher of the word. I am naturally a talker. I am naturally a writer. I'm naturally someone who can interview and bring women together. Those are my gifts, as well as some others. When I demonstrate them, it's not me showing off. It's not me, being beside myself. It is me demonstrating the glory of God. And I think that sometimes that is the mindset shift that we also need to make as well. That sometimes we play small because, we don't want to be seen, or we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. Well, just like Dr. Miles Monroe said, it's not about drawing attention to yourself or drawing attention to you. It's about drawing attention to your gift and therefore drawing attention to God. You are called to be the light of the world. And the Bible says that as light, we don't hide under bushels. We are supposed to be like cities on hills. And so once again, if there is something that God is telling you to do, stop playing small. Go get it, go do it, just be about the Father's business, because as I said, as with Joseph, that is literally where your favor and where your promotion comes from. I think the other thing as well, with regards to, the glory and your gift being, just kind of evidence of God's glory flowing through you, is just also literally the fact that, when you look at Joseph's life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, they all literally worked together, for the good, in the end. Hence the reason why his second son was called Ephraim. And so that's also kind of what I want to leave with you guys as well. I know that coming out of your comfort zone feels scary. I know that coming out of your comfort zone, well, just like in the title, as it says, is uncomfortable. I know that, what was number 2 again? So it was coming out of your comfort zone. It was operating in your gifts, even, when you're fearing being criticized or in the face of criticism. Yeah. None of these things are comfortable. None of these things are things that we particularly enjoy. And those are the things that Joseph called toil. However, if you stay the course, if you keep going, if, as Michelle said, if you fear God instead of man, at the end of the day, just like how Joseph literally had the dream saying that his brothers would one day bow to him, they absolutely will. Those same people who are naysayers, those same people who are trolls laughing at you or criticizing you, whatever the case may be, will also later turn around and end up having to bow to you. It's just as simple as that. Choose to fear God and not man. Do not shrink. Do not hide. When you hide your gifts, you hide the God in you. Okay? And that's really what it is that I want to leave you guys with. Like that's literally, I feel like that was what God wanted to say through me. That was what was kind of in my stomach and, bubbling over to share. I hope it all made sense. I feel like today I kind of spoke at you guys, but I don't know. This is an interesting one because, as I said, it wasn't actually what I had in mind to share. And yeah, here we are. Here we are. This is what ended up coming out. And at the end of the day, I try as much as possible to practice what I preach. I'm a vessel. This is not my ship to steer. And so at the end of the day, if God wants to share something else through me, I let him. All right. And so with all of that being said, if there are no other comments or questions, I'm going to end the video here. But guys, if you are struggling with some of what I was talking about, coming out of your comfort zone, being afraid of criticism, being afraid of, I don't know, just being considered conceited, or you're so used to kind of playing small and you don't know how to become bigger and be the person that God says you are, then what it is that you need is a change of mindset. And not only do you need a change of mindset, you need what it is that I had last year. Thank God, people around you to understand exactly what it means to chase the lifestyle and the dreams and the goals that God says he has for you. The people who will speak life into you and support you and keep you on track, okay? And so listen, I'm inviting you right now to, if you're on Facebook, click the link in the caption to join the Miracle Mindset Makeover, free for 7 days. If you're watching on YouTube, then it's in the description basically. And it just basically does what it says on the tin. Have a click, join us. We'd be happy to have you. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this video also, share it also with people that you believe need to hear it. And also comment, even if you're watching the replay, comment, let me know what your biggest takeaways were. And of course, as usual, I will circle back so that we can continue the conversation. All right, guys. So that's it for today. I will see you again next week. Have a blessed night, blessed day, whatever time it is for you. And we'll speak again then. All right. Take care. Bye.